We're in the process of ending a very old, long-standing chapter in our life that's actually been quite challenging. However, I think we've been rather scared about this process and maybe even a little impatient, making it more complicated and difficult than it really needs to be. But at this new moon in Pisces on Wednesday, March 18th, that changes. We finally calm the fear, let go of that impatience, and have way more trust and faith in the process and in what we're doing. That helps us to, yes, finally close out these old chapters in our life once and for all in a way that's more calm and easy, and in a way that's actually going to work. Hi, I'm your astrologer, Brittany of Ethereal Astrology, helping you to see the larger story of your life. Today, you're watching your astrology horoscope for the collective for the new moon in the sign of Pisces, which occurs on Wednesday, March 18th, 2026 at 9:23 p.m. Eastern Time or 6:23 p.m. Pacific Time, of course, depending upon which part of the United States and really the world that it is that you live in. Now, let's go ahead and let's hop right into it. In order to get started, what I like to do first is to place on the chart what it is that we'll be talking about in this video so that you can see it and follow along with me. So let me do that now. This video is for that new moon in Pisces on March 18th, 2026. As a result, this chart has been adjusted accordingly to that date and to that new moon. I know that because I've got the sun and the moon here at the same exact degree, 28 degrees, and the same exact sign, which is Pisces. And when the moon and the sun are at the same degree of the same sign, that is a new moon. And of course, it's in Pisces because that's where they both are. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, what are the main themes of this new moon? I like to discuss that next so that we can get a very big picture view of what might be going on here. Well, new moons are the beginning of a new lunar month or a new lunar cycle. And because of that, they're all about new beginnings. New beginnings, not only that, but new energy or a fresh start that we're getting to either do something new or do something that we were doing in a new way. Not only that, but because it's the beginning of a new beginning, right? A new lunar cycle, this thing is going to gain more momentum over time as it goes on for us to work this thing out. Not only that, but another thought I should give you too is that because the new moon is when the moon is the darkest in the sky, the hardest to see, okay, this may not be super visible consciously yet, but of course, as more time goes on and we get further throughout this lunar month, we're going to see it more and more and more what this new beginning is or this fresh start that we're getting more momentum to do. Okay, now what is it? What is it that we're getting a new beginning or a fresh start in that may not be super visible yet, but it's going to gain more and more momentum over time? Well, that's Pisces because that's where both the sun and the moon are. What is Pisces all about? Well, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. That's why there's a 12 by it. Okay. And the last sign of the zodiac is about ending things. However, this is typically not about any old ending because it's the last sign of the zodiac. This is a final ending, finally ending something once and for all in a more permanent way and saying goodbye to it. So I think that that is a big thing that at this new moon in Pisces, we're getting more momentum to do. We're getting more momentum to end something, or we're getting a new beginning to end something once and for all from the past with more energy or more momentum in order to actually make that happen. And not only that, but because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, not only is it about endings, but again, it's also about things from the past, right? Maybe that's an obvious correlation, but it's also too about things from the past as well, because in order to end something, right, usually there has to be something from the past that's been going on for a while that needs to be ended too. So not only can this new moon bring a need for us to more permanently end something now with more momentum, but it can also bring up some more and more things from the past that we need to end, we need to resolve, or that we need to approach in a different way so that we can finally end these things once and for all. Not only that, but another thing that Pisces has to do with is a lot about letting go, since it correlates to Neptune, the planet Neptune, which is also about kind of surrendering things too, as being very important. And that makes sense when you think about endings. Ending something is not about holding on to something. It's not about holding tighter. It's not about doing more. Really, ending something is about letting it go and kind of removing some of your attention from it as well, and surrendering and trusting more to that process. So again, not only is this new moon in Pisces about us getting more momentum to end something once and for all that's been going on, especially from the past, and to resolve things there, but to let it go and kind of surrender it. So that it's not continuing. So it's not becoming more and more of a thing in our lives. Not only that, but the next thing that I want to note as well about Pisces is really the sign of rest and of sleep and of ease, especially being a water sign, right? Water wants to flow. It doesn't want to go against the flow, against the grain. It wants to go where things are easy and where things are flowing, especially too with Pisces being symbolized by the fish as well. Okay, so I think that's another thing that we're trying to learn as well, is how to approach, especially these things from the past, since I think all these things are related, is how to approach this letting go of these things from the past and these ending of things with more rest, with more ease, where we're not overcomplicating the matter that's happening. Because I hope you all are understanding, ending things from the past is not about holding on to it, and it's not about doing more. Okay, ending things from the past is about letting go and surrendering it and really doing less, okay, so that it can exit stage left, okay, and making it be more of an easy and simpler process that is a bit more restful. And not only that, but another thing that Pisces has to do with, of course, being correlated to Neptune, is a lot about faith and trust in a higher power, in the universe and divine, whatever it is, that things are going to turn out fine, quite fine, better than you could have thought. You know, there's a need to have that trust, hope, and faith, especially too, because when you're ending things, there's certain things you're not seeing yet about what new is meant to come together. So there's needed a lot of trust and faith in order to trust that these things are going to end and something good is going to be waiting for you on the other side. There's also a need too for a lot of trust and faith, because letting go of things can be scary, right? It's like when you're letting go of something, there's more of like an empty feeling, you know, so there's a need to have more trust and faith that we're going to be just fine as these things finally close themselves out. Not only that, but another thought here too is that Pisces is a water sign. Again, water signs are about our emotions and really tending to those. What could that be? Well, Pisces to me in particular does tend to the emotions of loss and of grief, and does have a lot to do with emotional healing. Right? Because normally, right, when you leave something behind, which is what I think we're doing at this new moon, we are ending something from the past once and for all and letting it go. Trying to, without holding on, in a more easy way, right? Sometimes there can be a sense of loss, of like we're losing something because it's leaving, or a sense of grief. Or sometimes there can be a lot of weird emotions around that as well, that this new moon also, I think, is trying to get us to start working through healing some of those things as well, so that we can allow that to happen. Not only that, but I think the last thing that's coming to my mind right now about Pisces as well is that Pisces to me also has to do with wisdom, a higher sense of wisdom, because it does correlate naturally to Neptune, which to me is a lot about intuition and spirit and the divine, which obviously has a lot of wisdom and insight that's higher. But Pisces too also used to correlate to Jupiter before Neptune was discovered. And Jupiter is also the planet of wisdom and understanding. So I think another thing that's going on here at this new moon is that we're also trying to get a lot of wisdom and understanding. Wisdom and understanding about what? About why the past happened the way it did, and in what way, and wisdom and understanding about how to let the past go, right? In this way that's easier, that's more surrendered, more trusting, without the overdoing things as well. We're trying to get more wisdom and understanding about that too, in order to facilitate this process and make it easier, right? Make it as easy as it can be here. Anything else I want to note? Sure. Maybe another thought I'll give you as well, I think the last one here is that Pisces is also not a sign of like having a perfect routine or things being really scheduled and really well thought out. Again, it's about going with the flow, or letting things kind of be what they are, or letting things work themselves out with more patience. Maybe that's what I'm trying to get to here, especially if we're connected more with the divine, things with more patience. So I think another thing that we're trying to do here is not only end these old long-standing cycles from the past once and for all, and to do it in an easier way that's more surrendered, with more hope and faith, and more go with the flow, right? With more rest. And to work through some of the grief and the sense of loss around that, but also to be okay if the process is a little messy, a little messy, or feels a little all over the place, and to be patient while it works itself out in its own way and time, without us forcing our own way and timing on it, and allowing more of the divine and the universe to have a say in how it plays out. Okay, and I think that's all that's coming to me for now about these themes here that's coming up, right? To repeat that one more time, if you're new here, I like to do that. All the planets in my natal chart, they're retrograde. So we just, it's what we live with here. So I'm going to do that. The main theme of this new moon in Pisces is ending once and for all a lot and long-standing things from the past that are no longer meant for us anymore, and closing those out by really letting them go more easily, more simply, without holding on, and trusting more in the divine to guide us through it in its own way and time, and having faith that we're going to end up somewhere better, and working through some loss and grief and some emotions around that, and getting more wisdom from Spirit and the divine about how to do that as well, and what might come next. Okay, because that's all I'm going to mention there. What I like to do next in my videos is go backwards in time for a minute before I go forwards. I like to go backwards in time because I think that it's super important with the alignments that occurred before this new moon, because there's a new moon in Pisces every single year. That's not unique. That's not different. What makes each new moon or each lunation more different than the next one is the other alignments that happened before it or happened around it. So now I'm going to go back in time before I move forward to talk more specifically about this new moon itself. Now, I want to note this may take a while since I'm going to go back and cover a lot of alignments. So if you're not into that, no worries. Skip ahead in the video to where we talk about this new moon itself. I've got timestamps down below in the description box so that you can easily do that. But for now, I'm going to hop into the context. And to do that, I'm going to go back to an alignment that happened somewhere around January to April of 2020. We had a rare alignment. It was Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn in the South Node came conjunct towards the middle to end degrees of Capricorn right here. That is very rare because Saturn and Pluto only come conjunct about every 35 or 36 years and not always in the same sign. It also was rare too because Jupiter was there as well, which is not always near these things when they happen, especially the South Node. The South Node is also not there as well. This was difficult because Saturn and Pluto are both technically considered malefic planets. Jupiter is in Capricorn, a sign it does not like to be in and doesn't function that well in. And the South Node too as well can be a little bit of a challenge. So this was a rare challenge happening at that time. What was that rare challenge? Well, Saturn can indicate a sense of stuckness, feeling stuck. And in Capricorn's about like the overall direction of our lives, like everything in our lives, especially with it being the highest part of the chart and a cardinal sign. We just were dissatisfied with it. We didn't like it. Especially with Pluto nearby, Pluto can bring on some intense, uncomfortable emotions about the life that we had created thus far. Not only were we feeling very stuck about almost everything in our life and didn't like it, but we also realized there with Pluto's about permanent change, especially endings before the beginnings. We realized that we needed to make some permanent changes to end a lot of things in our life so that we could ultimately create something that we liked better. And with Jupiter, the biggest planet nearby, these weren't little endings. They weren't small ones. We realized we needed to end a lot of big things in our life that we did not like in order to move forward, which is obviously hard to make big change and hard to make these endings and leave things behind. That felt very uncomfortable, especially with the South Node there too, which is also about leaving things behind, but can also indicate a lot of attachment to that too. That can be difficult. Now, why is it that we were unhappy with our lives around that time, 2020, that we didn't like? Well, I believe it was because Pluto, right? I'm an evolutionary astrologer. I focus a lot on Pluto and the nodes. Wherever Pluto tends to be an area that's imbalanced, where we're doing too much in an unhealthy way that really needs to be purified, so to speak. And in Capricorn, what's too much Capricorn? Well, Capricorn is a lot about status and success and reputation, being the highest part of the chart where everyone's seeing you and looking at you. Okay. It's also Saturn ruled about responsibility and tradition and structure as well, and career and moving up the ladder. And I think that had gotten to be too much. We were valuing too much status, success, career, reputation, tradition, structure, maybe even reputation, right? That we were neglecting. Usually we neglect the opposite sign when it comes to, we were neglecting our emotions and what was emotionally fulfilling to us, right? We'd created a life that looked good on the outside, the job we think we should have, the partner we think we should have, or that looks good or that other people are going to like, but we had neglected what was truly meaningful to us on the inside because perhaps it maybe didn't look as good or didn't have as much money or wasn't as flashy that was going on. That's what created the whole issue. So we needed to end the things that were based on career status, success, and so that we could eventually create things that were based more on our emotions. And I think we did that, started to do that in January to April of 2020, which if I can be honest, took a very long time, longer than I would have liked or expected. Okay. Which then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to talk about, which is going to be last year, right? 2025, we had a new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aries, somewhere right around here, April. Let's write that, 2025. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts. And this was in Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, which also just happens to be about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts, which is really what we'd been trying to get to for a while. But not only is Aries about that, it's also a Mars ruled sign about action, taking action. However, this isn't any old action. Usually Aries also indicates taking action in new ways, right? Because it's a sign of new beginnings. Okay. And we're not just beginning new things, but we have to act in new ways, right? Because if we want something different than the life we've had, we have to act in different ways in order to get there. That's what we were trying to realize, okay, at this time and trying to get a big boost to do. And what are those different ways that we were trying to act? Remember, based on that last alignment, the different ways we were trying to act were not ways that were serious, traditional, structured, based on money, career status, and success. No. We are trying to get new behaviors that were based more on our emotional truth. What is emotionally fulfilling to me? Which makes me feel good? What is true to me on the inside, whether it looks good to other people or not? We are trying to act more in accordance with our emotions and with our inner truth, especially too with Aries being a fire sign about our passions and impulses and also about our identity, trying to act in ways that light us up, make us passionate, make us happy, more in tune with who we are there, so that we could begin again, so that we could stop with these endings, which have been going on to varying degrees for 5 years, okay, and start to move into different things. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment. And now I'm going to go through all the lunations, most of the lunations since that time, which was about a month later in May of 2025. We had a new moon in the next sign over of Taurus. New moons are about new beginnings. Taurus is a fixed earth sign, the second sign of the zodiac, which is about sustaining things, staying fixed in things, especially things that were just started during Aries season, which in this case is those new behaviors that are more in touch with our emotions. So we were trying to sustain those and get more confident. Taurus has to do with that there. Now, I also need to note as well that because Taurus is an earth sign, a fixed sign, it tends to be slower. So that could have felt slow. It could have felt slow for us to get the hang of these new behaviors, or it could have felt like life was just slower, because when we start to do things that are more in alignment with who we are, that are not responsible things that we should do, it feels like we're doing less, right? And sometimes when we're doing less, it feels like life is slower because we're just not doing as much as we were, because we're not doing things we don't have to do anymore. Okay. And we're listening to our emotions about it. Okay. But I think that was what was trying to happen there. That then leads me now the next new moon a month later in the next sign over of Gemini, somewhere around June of 2025. Okay. New moons are about new beginnings. Gemini is a lot about our mindset and adjusting our mindset. It's also too about adapting to something and becoming more flexible and more at ease with it. And what are we trying to adapt to get more flexible and more at ease with? Well, what happened in Aries? Because Aries, being the first sign of the zodiac, sets the tone for the entire astrological year, whatever happens in Aries season. Okay. So what were we trying to adapt to? We were trying to adapt to these new behaviors that are more in touch with our passions and more of our emotions, and get more flexible with them and adjust our mindset more to these behaviors so that we can embrace them more. That then leads me now to the next new moon about a month later, in the next sign over of Cancer in July of 2025, right? Last year. New moons are new beginnings. Cancer is a lot about our emotions and understanding more of what those are and what those need and what's fulfilling to us, which is the whole point of these new behaviors. It's also about our foundations in life and feeling more grounded and more solid in something. So in July of 2025, we began to understand even more what our emotions are saying, right? Because it's hard to act on your emotions if you aren't quite sure what your emotions want that would be fulfilling. We started to understand more of what our emotions wanted and feel more grounded, more solid in these different behaviors of what they are and what they need to be and of how to do them. That then leads me now to the next alignment. And now I'm going to start to add in some more of the full moons, which happened 2 weeks later. One of them was in July, also of 2025. It was a full moon in the opposite sign of Cancer, which is Capricorn, which happens to be where that Saturn, Pluto, South Node, Jupiter conjunction was in 2020. Full moons are about stepping into something more fully we've been working towards for quite some time. And Capricorn, being the highest part of the chart, is something becoming more publicly seen. It's also too being an earth sign about something more practical, more real, more tangible. It's also too being Saturn ruled more decisive about making some decisions. And I think what happened that we were trying to make more publicly seen in a more practical way and make decisions about was these new behaviors. Right? Now that we are feeling more grounded and in new behaviors that are more in touch with our emotions, we're trying to make more decisions to act on these behaviors in the real world in a tangible way in our lives so that they could actually come to bear on our experience. And with Capricorn being a cardinal sign that starts things so that we could start to turn our life in a different direction that is based more in our emotions than whatever it was in the past. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment about 2 weeks after that, in August of 2025, we had a new moon over here in Leo. Okay, now that new moon in Leo also happened to be going on at the same time that Mercury was retrograde in Leo as well, near that new moon, which made it a little bit of a challenge for that reason. Well, what was that about? Well, new moons are about new beginnings. Leo is a lot about courage. It's a lot about bravery, being correlated to the lion. It's also too about staying fixed in something, being a fixed sign, staying with something with more courage and boldness. And with Mercury retrograde in that same sign at the time, which again is hard, we didn't have the courage. We were losing courage. We were losing courage. We were losing boldness. We were losing momentum on some of these decisions we were trying to make to align our life more with our emotions. And we were either holding off on them, slowing down on them, or going back on these behaviors and not following through in doubting what we had done that then caused us to be stuck and stagnate a little. That then leads me now to the next alignment I want to mention, which happened about 2 weeks after that. Also somewhere, I believe around August of 2025, we had a full moon in the opposite sign of Aquarius. Full moons are about stepping into things we've been working towards for a while. Aquarius is an air sign about detaching, especially from emotions, right? Because it's an air sign, detaching from emotions. Not only that, but Aquarius too is a lot about freedom, breaking free from things that might have been keeping us stuck. It also too is about a unique perspective and seeing things in a different way that I think is more helpful, more solutions oriented. And what I think we were trying to break free from and detach from and get solutions on was what? Was that stuck energy. Remember, we were scared. We were trying to act in accordance with our emotions. Then we got scared and we backed off and we got afraid. Well, this full moon in Aquarius was helping us to really break through the fear around this new behavior and overcome that fear so that it was no longer holding us back from honoring more of our emotions. That then leads me to the next alignment I want to mention about 2 weeks after that, and the next sign, the next new moon in Virgo in September of 2025. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, fresh starts. Virgo is a lot about our habits and routines, things that we do on a daily basis, day in and day out. Now, Virgo is not about big things because it's ruled by Mercury, a very small planet. This isn't about big habits, big changes, big things, little habits, little daily routines, okay? What were we trying to do in a little bit of a daily way, right? Habits, routines. Well, it was those behaviors that are more in alignment with our emotions, right? Because we just overcame some fear. Okay, we just overcame some fear around it. And the answer at this new moon in Virgo was not, I'm going to go take big moves again right away because we're scared a little. It was saying, okay, I'm trying to overcome some fear. Let me ease back into it. A little here, a little there. Let me ease back into these behaviors. Okay, now that I've overcome some fear, and try to do them on a more daily basis. Not a big way, a little way, but on a daily basis so I don't scare myself again. Okay, that was happening. That then leads me now to the next alignment, the next full moon, September, also somewhere in September, in the opposite sign of Pisces, September 2025. It was a full moon in Pisces, and that was an eclipse that we had here on the North Node. Full moons are about stepping into something more fully. Now, Pisces is a lot about hope and faith. And with it being a full moon, I interpreted that as more active and active faith, which to me is like taking a leap of faith, and doing something perhaps in a more bold way. And what were we taking a leap of faith to do something more boldly? Well, it was that those actions that we were trying to do little by little in a more habitual way, which was honoring more of our emotions. Okay. What we realized at this full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces is like, okay, I'm overcoming some fear. I'm easing into these new behaviors. I'm doing them again. And because I'm doing them again and I'm feeling more comfortable, maybe now I can take a big leap. Maybe now I can take a big risk to honor my emotions. Pisces being a water sign, to try to create more things in my life that I align with, right? Which could have been related to what happened in July. There. That then leads me now to the next alignment I want to mention, which was 2 weeks after that. It was another new moon that we had here in Virgo. We had 2 new moons in Virgo this year. October, I believe, October of 2025. Okay, this was an eclipse, and this one was a bit more of a challenge because it's on the South Node, and the South Node just makes things more difficult. So this was a more challenging new moon eclipse. What was that about? Well, new moons are about new beginnings. And the South Node is difficult because the South Node is a lot about letting things go that are no longer working for us or in alignment for us. And Virgo, when negative, right, because these are things we need to let go of with the South Node, can tend to be about worry, doubt, overthinking, anxiety, insecurity, overwork, proving ourselves, guilt and shame, all of that. And I think what we realized at that eclipse is that we were taking a leap of faith again, to try to act more on our emotions, but that it was bringing up a lot of guilt. It was bringing up a lot of shame. It was bringing up a lot of worry and anxiety and doubt and need to overprove and overdo things and insecurities that we needed to work through. We needed to work through here so that they didn't continue to hold us down, that we then tried to do. That then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which was a full moon over here in Aries. Okay. And also somewhere around October of last year. Full moons are about stepping into something more fully. Aries is a fighter. It's not going to back down that easy. Aries is going to conquer any issues in its way. And it's a doer. It's going to take more action, and it's more bold and courageous. So what I think that was about in October of last year, that full moon in Aries was about us fighting, overcoming the fear, the insecurity, the doubt, the worry, the guilt, and the shame around taking this big leap of faith to follow more of our emotions, whatever they were telling us. Okay. And so that we can continue with it, so that we can continue with the honoring of our emotions, whatever they were telling us, right? Whether they were socially acceptable or not. So it was us overcoming more of those issues that we needed to continue onwards. That then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention 2 weeks after that, a new moon in that next sign over Libra, somewhere around November of 2025. Okay. What was that about? Well, new moons are all about new beginnings. Libra is a lot about balance, peace, ease, kind of recalibrating to a lot of things. And not only that, it's also a sign of relationships too. And what I think we were trying to find balance, peace, and ease in is this new approach where we're honoring more of our emotions, because it had been a little bit of a roller coaster, right? There, we'll do something and then we'll stop and we'll get afraid and then we'll try again, and then we'll get afraid again. There's another issue. So this new moon in Libra was like, how can we do these new behaviors in a more balanced way without kind of going to extremes? And was also about us starting to consider how we're going to figure relationships into it, because we hadn't really been working with relationships thus far. That then leads me now to the next alignment 2 weeks later, a full moon over here in Taurus, also in November of 2025. Okay. full moons are about stepping into things more fully. Taurus is similar to Venus, Libra in the sense that they're both ruled by Venus, which is a lot about ease and allowing things to happen more naturally instead of pushing and forcing. It also too is more about ourself, not relationships, getting more of ourself in order and coming more confident. So what I think happened there is that we weren't quite ready yet to deal with relationships. Okay, even though that's coming, we were more wanting to work through ourself and to get more secure and confident in this different approach and feel more calm and at ease about it, which we were doing, more calm and at ease with the actions to follow our emotions. That then leads me now to the next alignment. I think that it was also in November. I think it was also in November too of 2025. We had a new moon in that next sign over of Scorpio, while Mercury was also retrograde in the sign of Scorpio as well, which obviously makes that a little bit more of a challenge. New moons are about new beginnings. Scorpio is about relationships now. It's also about money. And it's also too about permanent change, especially within ourselves emotionally too. And I think we were trying to do that, trying to figure out relationships and how they factor into these new behaviors, a new sense of self where we're honoring our emotions and how money factors into it, and trying to also adjust emotionally. But with Mercury retrograde, that was difficult. That it was difficult to figure out how to bring relationships and money into this new approach. And maybe there was some confusion about it, and maybe some things from the past that were still not worked out that we needed to support us acting in this different way. That was a bit hard. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment. I think it was December now of 2025. We had a full moon over here in Gemini. Full moons are stepping more fully into things. Gemini's conversations, a lot of conversations we needed to have here in order to figure out the relationships and figure out the money and figure out how to adjust them to match these new behaviors. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment, which was a new moon in that next sign over Sagittarius in December as well of this year, 2025. New moons are about new beginnings. Sagittarius is a lot about wisdom and understanding. It also too can be about new things manifesting. And that new moon was in a hard spot. It was square Saturn and Neptune at the last degree of Pisces, making that a difficult one. And I think that was us trying to get more wisdom and understanding, sure, about the relationships and money and how everything was supposed to fit together with these new behaviors. I think it was also us trying to move on again in these new behaviors after figuring out some things with relationships and money and how it would all come together. But again, with that new moon being in a hard spot, I think we were still feeling stuck. There was a little bit of a stuck energy there where we felt like despite all our effort to heal and overcome stuff in this new behavior, like nothing was working. Like we want wisdom, understand, we want new things to happen, but for some reason we just felt stuck, like things weren't gelling and like things weren't coming together. That was very frustrating. That then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which was in January of this year, 2026, a full moon in Cancer. Okay, full moons are about stepping into something more fully. Cancer is a lot about it is sure a lot about our emotions. It was also near Jupiter, about wisdom, also about wisdom and understanding. Cancer is also about the subconscious and things going on within us. It's also too about safety and security. So I think what began to happen at this full moon in Cancer in January of this year is that we realized that maybe one of the reasons why things weren't coming together yet in this new experience with these new behaviors is because we didn't feel safe enough. We didn't feel safe enough emotionally to really honor more of our emotions, right? Which is the whole point. We're trying to act in accordance with our emotions, to honor our emotions. And we didn't feel safe enough to act in this way that we needed. And there were still some more emotional things that perhaps that we needed to work out there as well. Not only that, but again, with Cancer being a lot about the past, I think it was also us starting to make sense of a lot of our actions from the past and what needed to happen in order to bring everything together, especially with that safety being a key component. That then leads me now to the next alignment, January, I believe also January of 2026, right? Which was here in new moon in Capricorn. What was that about? New moons are about new beginnings. Capricorn is a lot about the direction our life is going in, but it's also too about managing and structuring things to kind of make them more effective and more efficient. And so I think what we realized in January at that new moon in Capricorn is that we didn't quite feel safe enough to honor our emotions and act in a way that was more emotionally fulfilling to us, and that we needed to we needed to manage our situation a lot better to make us feel safe. And we needed to put more structures and boundaries in place to make us feel safer, which could have included with relationships and money, right? And adjust those in a way to make us feel slightly more secure and more protected, not so that we could not follow our emotions, but so that we could eventually act on our emotions in a way that did feel more secure and more supported, which I think was fine. That then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which was 2 weeks after that, February of this year, 2026, we had a full moon in Leo. Full moons are about stepping into something more fully. Leo is a lot about happiness, joy, also too bold, risk-taking there to do what we love and enjoy. And I think that's what was happened. We finally felt safe enough. And like we had rearranged our money and our relationships and all of that to be secure enough that we felt like we could, yes, take risks yet again to try to act in this different way that we needed in order to get into a different experience and to take big, bold risks to do it. That then leads me now to the next alignment I want to mention. Also in February of 2026, this year, we had a new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aquarius. After that, new moons are new beginnings. Aquarius solar eclipses superpower that. Aquarius is a lot about breaking free from things that were keeping us stuck. And so what I think happened then is that after we took some big, bold risks again to honor our emotions, we realized that we needed to break free from some things from the past, that there were still some more things maybe from the past now that we needed to kind of once and for all in a very significant way let go of in order to support this happy, bold thing that's honoring our emotions that we wanted to do. And we got more of the energy and like the momentum to really confront kind of some of those things that it is that was happening. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment. I believe it was in March of 2026. We had a full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo on the South Node, a little bit of a challenge. Their full moons, because of the South Node, full moons are all about kind of stepping into things more fully, but the South Node is a lot about letting go of things, and the eclipse is going to superpower that. And Virgo is about that worry, that guilt, that shame, that insecurity, that overworking and that overthinking. And I think that full moon was about us letting go of that, because with that solar eclipse and Aquarius, we really want to seal the deal now. We really want to seal the deal to let go of these old things so that we can finally act in the new way that's honoring our emotions. And so this full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo was about us saying no more fear, no more guilt, no more shame, no more overworking and having to prove ourselves, was about us saying no to that so that we can do what needs to be done to act in this different way that's honoring more of our emotions. Okay, that then leads me now to this new moon, right? In Pisces here, March of 2026, for which this video is for. New moons are about new beginnings, and Pisces is about the finally ending things from the past, which I think correlates to 2020. Finally ending those things from the past that we've been trying to end already since 2020 once and for all, so that we can move into something different, and about us trusting more in the process and letting things go and trying to have it be easy and trying to have hope and faith that it'll work out, and working through some emotions from the past few years, like a sense of loss and grief for what has happened there. Okay, and that's it. Because that's it. I'll try to repeat that very briefly since that's kind of long. But what I think has been going on the past few years is that we've been trying to end a bunch of situations in our life that were not in alignment with our emotions, and create new situations in our life that are more in alignment with our emotions. Not only have we been trying to do that, but in order to create these new situations that are more in alignment with us, we've needed to learn to act in a different way. That's been going on, that we've spent the whole past year doing, and acting in that different way has not been the easiest thing in the world because it's been so different from what we're used to. It's brought up a lot of fear and anxiety and insecurity and guilt and shame and feeling like we need to overwork, and maybe even some confusion about what exactly this new way is that's kept us stuck. Not only that, But if we haven't been confused about what this new way is, and if we hadn't had fear, guilt, and shame to work through, then there's been some issues with relationships and money that weren't where they needed to be in order to also have us act in this new way. That's also been hard. Well, as of the past few weeks, we finally worked out all of those issues. And because we finally have worked out all of those issues, so that we can move in this different way, we're trying to release all these things from the past once and for all and heal from that so that we can move on. Okay, and that's it. Because that's it, I'm now going to move forward in time now to talk about this new moon in Pisces itself. But instead of talking about the new moon in Pisces, first I want to talk about some other alignments, and then I'll back into the new moon in Pisces. So I'm going to do that. The first alignment I'm going to start with here is going to be Saturn conjunct Neptune here in the sign of Aries. This is clearly a very important alignment. I think one of the most important ones in the chart right now, because Saturn and Neptune don't come conjunct all that often. That's also about every 35 or 36 years, similar to like that Pluto-Saturn stuff we were talking about. So this is somewhat of a rare alignment, and it's even more rare for it to be in Aries. And it was when this came exact at the first degree of Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. So this is a very significant, rare alignment. What is this bringing? Well, Neptune can be a lot about like our dreams, our imagination, creativity, our intuition, something more spiritual inside of us. And Saturn is about giving that form and shape and direction and focus. And in Aries, where both of these things are, it's about new beginnings, being the first sign of the zodiac, new beginnings, new experiences that are totally different, that we haven't had before, which also correlates with it being a Mars ruled sign to a totally different way of acting as well. So with this alignment here now, where it wasn't before, this alignment is trying to give our ideas that we've had for a very long time about a new life coming together that's very different, with new behaviors that honor our emotions, giving it more form and more shape to actually make it real, to actually make it happen, so that it's not just a pipe dream, so that it's not just an idea in our mind, but so that our idea of a new life can actually occur with more of that focus and discipline in order for it to happen. Okay. And that's big. Because again, I hope you're understanding, before this alignment happened, which was recent, we might have had a lot of ideas about new things, but we didn't have the focus, the determination in order to make them happen, or they just weren't happening, okay? Or we didn't have the understanding to make it happen, and now we do. Now we have more of the understanding about what new thing we want to create and how to make it happen, and the determination to make it occur. Okay, that I think is a big deal. Now with Neptune and Saturn being there, because these can be challenging because Neptune's an outer planet and Saturn's technically malefic. Okay, with them being here, does that mean it's happening overnight? No, Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay, Neptune can, even though Saturn is going to make things more solid, right? Neptune is a lot about the void, right? Is a lot about the void, can also make things a little bit hazy, right? Because in order to make something new, it kind of has to come from the old. It kind of has to come from something else that can be a little hazy and a little confusing at first. Okay, that's happening. So there can still be some of that that's going on. New, yes, trying to make the new, still a little hazy. Okay. But even though it's still a little hazy, it's happening, and we're having more of that motivation and more of that drive in order for it to occur, which I do think is a good thing. Okay, the next alignment that I want to talk about is going to be here, Venus and Aries making a square to Jupiter and Cancer, which is exact at the time of this new moon, as you can see here for what this chart is for. And now I'm more hopeful on this alignment on the whole, because Jupiter is, technically about gifts and good luck. It's exalted in Cancer, a sign where it loves to be in. And I consider Jupiter, even by hard aspect, to be a positive. Although I will give you a negative in a minute, because Venus is here in Aries, a sign it doesn't like to be in. But I'm going to focus with the positive first. Okay. Venus is about allowing and receiving things to occur. And Aries, being that first sign of the zodiac, is about new beginnings, a new experience, a new chapter in life where we're doing things in a new way, which, as I've explained prior to this, is about honoring more of our emotions, is allowing that to happen, us to do that, these new things to occur. We've got it making a square to Jupiter. Squares can indicate things needing to be done together. Jupiter is about wisdom and understanding. It's also about optimism, right? A half glass full, rose-colored glasses type of planet about it, especially in Cancer within our emotions. It's also a very big planet which can expand things and make things feel more solid and more grounded. And remember, it's connecting to Venus and Aries. So what we're more excited and optimistic about is the new things that we're receiving, that we're allowing to happen in this new way of doing things. And what we're getting more wisdom about is this new way of doing things. And what we're feeling more grounded in, that's more real, that has more of a foundation, that's stronger, that's coming together, is a new experience of life. So to put these two alignments together that I've talked about so far is that we've recently got more commitment and more dedication to make a new life a reality than we've had before, with more wisdom, more understanding, and to do things in a new way, even though it's been a little frustrating to create something from nothing, right? But we've recently got the motivation to do that. And that motivation and that drive and that focus to kind of create a new life, doing things in a new way, is starting to work. It's starting to work to bring more new things together and to make us feel more excited about it, more hopeful, and to start to see more of the new life start to form in a certain way. Now, again, maybe here's a few thoughts. Cancer is private. It's the lowest part of the zodiac. So maybe we're not seeing the new life in a huge way. Maybe we're not seeing it big in every single aspect in our lives, but there's an inner feeling that the new is coming together. And there's some sort of sense in some way in our lives, something new is working, is gelling, is coming together. That is very good. Okay. What I want to say next now, back on that alignment, is that even though I love that, Venus is still in Aries at the end of the day, and Venus doesn't like to be in Aries. Why doesn't Venus like to be in Aries? Well, again, Venus is about receiving and allowing things to happen, and Aries is not very good at that. Aries is about acting and going out to get things. Aries isn't going to wait for something to happen. Aries is going to go out and get it. So what this can also create is a sense of impatience, or a sense of impulsiveness. Now, I think it comes from a good place because I tend to like this. It comes from excitement. Do you see? We are creating something new and finally it's freaking working. We've been trying to make it work for 5 freaking years and finally it's happening, and we're starting to feel it in some sort of way in our lives happen, right? So we're getting very excited, and that excited feeling is then making us want more. I want more new. I want faster. More faster new, please. Let's get on with the show. Let's make this happen because it's been so long to get here. That can be going on, having us maybe fall out of that receptive state and wanting to push and force more new things to occur. Okay. That then leads me now to the next alignment that I'm going to mention, which is going to be with a bunch of these here. We've got Mars, Mercury retrograde, conjunct both Mars and the North Node in Pisces, which it did a few days before this new moon, but is still kind of hanging around at the time of this new moon as well. Now, there are some things that are frustrating about this alignment too, because Mars is involved. And Mars is technically considered a malefic planet, right? And it correlates to Aries where Venus is, okay? And Mars can sometimes push things because it's impatient and it's impulsive and it's very passionate, can sometimes push things too much, too far as well. So this is another indicator in the chart, not just Venus and Aries, but Mars making an aspect with these things, that there's a lot of pushing and forcing, which again, I think comes from a good place, but it's still happening. Okay. And what we're pushing and forcing, okay, is a few things. In Pisces, where Mars is, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, about leaving the past behind once and for all. The final goodbye, the last sign. It's about leaving these things from the past behind. We're pushing and forcing that, right? Because we're thinking the sooner we leave the past behind, the more we can move into the new, right? The more we can move into the new because they're kind of connected. And because there is stuff from the past that still needs to be resolved, right? Not only that, but with Mars making a conjunction to Mercury, which is retrograde, Mercury is about the thoughts and it's about our mind. It's about our thoughts and our minds, thinking things through. It can also be about our habits and our routines. And Mars is also pushing that, pushing our thoughts, pushing our mind. And in Pisces, again, the last sign of the zodiac, to figure out how to release the stuff from the past and how to be done with it. And how to not deal with it anymore and to fix this, right? To leave this stuff from the past behind, because there's something from the past that is keeping us stuck, that's still holding us back. Okay, especially with Mercury retrograde there in the last sign of the zodiac. So this is creating a lot, right? Mars will push things of intense thoughts, intense conversations, maybe even intense actions to try to get rid of, release, let go of the stuff from the past, Pisces, so that we can get on to the new stuff that we're excited about. Okay, and that is creating an issue because Mars can tend to overdo things, right? And Mercury is retrograde here. And what can that issue be? Well, when sometimes Mars pushes things too much, it can create in the mind, right, with Mercury there, overwhelm. We're feeling overwhelmed. We're feeling overwhelmed now with all these thoughts about all this stuff from the past. Or we're feeling overwhelmed because Mercury also has to do with our habits and routines about all the work it's going to take, all the things we need to do to get rid of these things from the past. We're feeling overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, how do I get rid of the past? Oh my gosh, there's so many things to do and I want to do them all at once and I want them done now. I wish they were over. It's bringing a lot of that. Not only that, but with Mercury still retrograde, it can also bring up a lot of confusion too, because we're pushing things. We're pushing things and we're overdoing it. And we're too much in the head and there's all these thoughts and we're feeling overwhelmed and now we're confused about how to leave the past behind to move on. That can be very hard. Not only that, but this can also create anger with Mars, anger at ourselves, anger with other people, coming out verbally. That could also be hard because we're tired. We're tired of this BS. We're tired of things from the past being in the way, holding us down. We just want to move forward into the future. We're feeling like the new is so close and we're tired of this. Okay, that's going on. That can happen here. That can be a bit of a challenge. Now why? Maybe I need to say why are we, another reason why. Let me give you another thought here. Why would we be also pushing things too much to release the stuff from the past? Well, I think with the Venus square Jupiter, part of it is the excitement. We're so excited about the new. We can feel it so much. We can almost taste it or we feel it in our bones, whatever. So excited. Part of it is passion. It's the passion and excitement making us get hasty. But another thought I'll give you could be a little bit of fear as well, too, because Mars is involved. And even though we typically think of Mars as being courageous, part of the reason why Mars, it has to have courage and has to push through things is because I think, this is my opinion, Mars gets afraid that if I don't push, then it's never going to happen. If I don't push, then I'm never going to get the new thing. I'm going to be stuck forever. So I think there's also a level of fear here too, not only excitement for the new, but fear that if I don't make the new happen immediately, I'm going to lose my window. I'm going to lose my window. I'm going to lose my opportunity. It's going to go away. It's not going to happen. That I think is also going on there too. That is bringing some of this anger and frustration that I think is also hard contributing to some of this that's happening. So maybe to bring that together before I add some few things, right? We finally have the commitment, the determination, the wisdom to create something new, different, and better in our lives that we've been trying to get to for quite some time and in a new way that's more in touch with our emotions. Okay. And it's actually working. It's actually beginning to work to create something else in our lives that's different, that feels more real, that feels more solid, feels more like it's coming together in a real way in some way, shape, and form. And that's making us very excited. Okay. But because it's finally happening and we've really been trying to do this for a long time and it hasn't happened until now, I think we're getting too excited. And I think we're also getting afraid that if we don't do it now, it's never going to happen. And both of those things are causing us to push and force this new beginning to happen, and to push and force anything that is in the way of this new beginning from the past, which there still are some things, to be more fully resolved and to fix it and to think through it and to do whatever needs to be done. And this pushing and forcing, this urgency is actually making things worse, is making things more complicated, is making our mind unclear, is making us feel very overwhelmed, where we either can't think straight and are confused, or we're feeling like we need to do more than we really need to do, or overcomplicating the matter, or just feeling like we have so much to do to break free from. That is just hard, making us frustrated, angry, upset, all of that. Okay. That then leads me now to the next thing I want to mention. And that next thing that I want to mention is back to Mercury again. And really back to this alignment again in general. And that's because even though this is happening, they both are on the North Node, which I tend to like, being an evolutionary astrologer, about a purpose and destiny at this time in our lives to help us grow and evolve. And also too, because Mercury is stationing direct. I believe it's going to go direct 2 days after this new moon in Pisces. And I also like that as well, because when a planet is stationing direct, it means that it's appearing to move very still in the sky, if at all. Okay. And when a planet is appearing to move very still in the sky, it makes it easier to see, easier to focus on, which can bring clarity and insight, especially with it about to go direct, to help us move forward, right? To stop moving backwards, to finally figure things out and to move on in a better way. So both of these to me can be very positive and can bring what? Insight, North Node, insight to help us progress, North Node, move forward towards our destiny, clarity, Mercury, okay, clarity of mind about what to do and how to do it. That's also going to help us with it about to move forward in our lives. Very progressive, forward moving alignment with insight, clarity to help us do it, okay, as well. What is that insight or clarity that we're going to get? Well, Pisces, remember, is a lot about our emotions, too. And so I think it's a lot about working through our emotions, especially that sense of fear, and that sense of impatience about it as well. Working through those to overcome that by honoring our emotions and trying to heal some of those things. There maybe also could be, I didn't mention this a minute ago, but there could also be too, another reason why we could be pushing and forcing is because, right, Pisces has to do with loss and grief. Maybe there's like a weird feeling as well coming up around what we're leaving behind and the loss. So it's going to help us work through those emotions as well, and to kind of get to the bottom of those feelings so that they aren't overriding our logical mind and all of these other things that we need. Not only is it going to give us clarity for that, but again, Pisces is a lot about trusting and having faith that everything's going to be okay and that the new is going to be waiting for us when it's time. When we're there, when we're ready for it as well. So it's also about that, having the trust and faith that it's going to be there. It's also about patience and divine timing and aligning more with the timing of the divine and being patient as it happens. It's also too about being more at ease as we do this stuff and going with the flow. Because remember, ending something, which is really what needs to happen before the new begins, is not about holding on to things. It's not about doing more and amassing more stuff. Ending something is really just about letting it go. Just not engaging. I'm just going to let it go and I'm just not going to engage, right? So we're also realizing too, not only that we have some emotional things here that are going on inside, causing us to be overwhelmed and confused and all of that we need to tend to, but that we need to trust and have faith we're going to be fine, okay? Which is going to help us with the emotional issues, get to the new, and to realize that ending this stuff doesn't need as much effort as we think it does, and doesn't need as much thought as we think it does. And it is actually rather simple and rather easy. You just don't engage as much, and you just let it play out on its own time and in its own way, right? And to have faith that it's going to be fine. So it's giving us a lot of that, and that is going to give us the clarity, right, about how to let go of these things from the past in an easier way with more forward momentum, right? Do you see that's actually going to work? That then leads me now to the new moon in Pisces, right? Don't want to talk about that. Sure. Maybe I should also say that Mercury, on the North Node, stationing direct, is also going to trine Jupiter, which I tend to like. A lot of wisdom and understanding, helping us calm our emotions, Cancer, and feel better there. But okay. Now I want to move into the next alignment, which is that new moon itself, of which this video is for here, 28 degrees Pisces. What is that about? New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts, right? That aren't visibly seen at first because that's when the moon is very dark, but grow over time. And I think grow over time, especially towards that full moon, in a more sustainable way, right? Because every day after the new moon, we see more and more and more of the moon in a consistent way as time goes on. And it's about the past, right? The new moon's in Pisces and letting the past end once and for all, being the last sign of the zodiac. It's also about that trust and that faith that it's going to happen in the way it needs to happen. It's also about letting go and letting that be easy and not trying to over control and overdo things as well. It's also about that faith and that inner healing. And this new moon is going to give us more momentum for that. That's going to gradually build over time and more consistency, more continuity to make that happen. Do you see? So it's not like so that we're not waffling back and forth between like new and old, because I think that's kind of happening. It's like one day we're feeling like we're in the new, and then the next day we're frustrated, there's still old stuff around, and then the next day we're excited we're in the new, and then the next day we're frustrated. No, this is going to give us more of that continuous emotion or that continuous like internal motivation to close out the past so that we can move forward into the new. And maybe a way to put it too, that just came to me, Pisces, everything is connected in Pisces. Everything kind of comes out in the wash here. I think it's also going to help us to see that they're both connected. It's not either I'm in the old or the new life. It's not an either or thing. It's releasing the old is going to get us in the new. They're connected. It's also this realization of I need to stop fighting myself. I need to stop thinking either I'm in the new or the old, and I need to start seeing them more synergistically. I need to start seeing them work together. That the more I release the old, the more I'm going to get to the new and channel my emotion, moon, right, a part of the new moon, more effectively with the sun in order to help me do that. Okay. Not only that, but the new moon is at 28 degrees. It's not the last degree of the sign. I'm actually very thankful for that because the last degree can be kind of intense. But it is still at one of the last degrees of the sign. And again, the end of a sign is about closing things out once and for all, permanent endings too, right? Before we eventually move into the next sign. So not only is this just like, let's just end these things from the past, this is a more permanent ending, a more final ending, especially with Saturn and Neptune now in Aries solidifying a new experience to make it come together. So that's another thought there too. More continuous energy, momentum that's just going to build over time to fully release the past once and for all, finally close out very long old cycles, may have gone on for 35 years or more, right? So that we can move into the new in a more consistent way, right? In a more enduring way. Okay, are you understanding that? More consistent and enduring way. Because there's been lots of times over the course of the past few years that we've thought we're ending the new and that we've thought we're moving forward in a new way. And there's been plenty of times that I've said that in the horoscopes too, if you just listen to how the last year went, where we thought we were going to do it and then it didn't happen, right? Well, I think I'm going to move out of the old into the new, and then all of a sudden something else comes up and I'm afraid and there's another issue. No, that's not what's happening here. This is permanently ending these old things once and for all in a real way, finally happening with more consistency. Okay? That's what this is. And it's that because Saturn and Neptune are now finally in Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, with this new moon here in the last sign of the zodiac at one of the last degrees of it. Okay? That's going on. Okay, so do you see here, to bring it together before I add one or two more things on, we finally have the focus, determination, commitment, and wisdom very recently to take our idea for a new experience of life that we've had for quite some time and actually make it a reality and to behave in the very different ways that we need, which are more in tune with our emotions in order to make that happen. And because we finally got more of the clarity, the determination, the focus, and are doing it, it's been working. Maybe not in a huge way, but it's been working in some way that's been making us feel very positive, very hopeful, very optimistic, and like there is something solid that is beginning to form, even if it's little. Okay? And this excitement of the new that's happening is making us is this excitement of the new and is happening is also bringing on some fear. Maybe I'll say that is also bringing on some fear, because the more excited we get about the new, the more afraid we are that the new is going to slip out of our hands and we're going to lose it, especially because we're not fully in it yet. And that excitement and that fear is then bringing on a lot of pushing and forcing and impatience, because we don't want this thing to pass us by. We really want to make it happen. It is making us push and force this new beginning to happen. And the way to push and force the new beginning to happen is by finishing a bunch of old things that are still in the way. And this pushing and forcing to finish the old things to get to the new is then creating a lot of anxiety and a lot of issues, because it's stressing us out and it's making us too much in the mind and overthink things and try to strategize and overwork and overwhelmed by everything we need to do and how much it's going to take, and making us angry and frustrated that all this stuff is in the way that's hard, bringing on a lot of confusion. Okay, that's very difficult. Okay, but from this difficulty that's happening and this frustration and it's pushing and forcing, all of a sudden at this new moon in Pisces, what this new moon in Pisces is meant to bring, all of a sudden we're going to realize, we're pushing and forcing. And we're going to realize why we're pushing and forcing, which sure is some of the excitement, but also too some of the fear it's going to pass us by. Okay. And us realizing why we're pushing and forcing and dealing with that, with the fear, and calming the fear and having more trust and faith that everything's going to be fine and this new beginning isn't going to pass us by, is then what? Going to help us actually end the things that need ending once and for all. End this whole chapter and end it in the right way, in a real way that's actually going to work, that's actually going to be effective, with more continuous momentum to actually make it happen, to get to where we need to go. Okay? Once and for all, and to do it without the stress, without the anxiety, but with more ease, to allow it to happen instead of fighting against it. Okay. That's especially true too, because this new moon is making some very positive alignments as well. Now that we're focusing on the new moon, one of those is going to be a sextile over here to Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Okay, the new moon sextile Uranus in Taurus. I like this because it's a sextile. I almost always interpret a sextile in a positive way. That's just my preference. Okay, sextiles to me indicate opportunities, positive opportunities for things to happen. Uranus can indicate the sudden and unexpected. Right? This is a good sudden and unexpected thing here. Taurus can be about money. Money can also be about our confidence, our stability, our sense of security here. Can also too be about kind of something more sustaining things, right? It's a fixed sign, sustaining something, more confident to sustain something that we need in order to bring something else together. So this, to me, can be very good. This is us finally calming our emotions so that we can release the past once and for all in a more consistent way, and something unexpected giving us a boost, unexpectedly positive, giving us a boost with money or with our own sense of self to help us end these things and move forward and to stay firm. Sustain, stay fixed in this process, and more confident that we are doing the right thing, that needs to be done here as like a little of a boost of like, you're doing good, keep going, that I think is very, very nice. Okay. To help us end these old things and get into the new. Okay. This can also be an idea. Uranus can also be an unexpected idea. That's also very positive to help us continue releasing these old things and moving forward into new things much better. Okay. That then leads me to the next. It's also making another sextile, slightly out of sign, but I might consider it here over to Pluto and Aquarius as well on the other side. Okay. That the new moon is making. This is also positive, being a sextile indicating opportunities. Aquarius is a lot about breaking free from things that are keeping us stuck. It's also about our freedom and feeling more authentic and creating a life that we feel is just more true to who we are. It can also be about us kind of seeing things from a different perspective or a bigger perspective as well. Did I say more unique ideas and solutions? Aquarius being an air sign can bring that as well, and can also help us, because Aquarius is a lot about detaching from our emotions. I think we still have some. The new moon is in Pisces, but to not feel as burdened by our emotions. We're feeling emotions, but more of the good ones, and not as burdened by them as here. That's happening, that I think is very, very good. Okay, which I think is really the main message of the new moon. The main message of the new moon is not frustrating, forcing, pushing. That's more of a passing energy. The main message of this new moon is finally clarity, right? About how to finally end the old and get into the new thing, and more consistent determination and energy to finish the past so that we can get to the new with more unexpected support, especially financially, to help that happen, and good ideas in order to make that occur as well, with our emotions in a better state. Okay. That then leads me now to the next thing, and this I think will be the last alignment that I might mention, which is that this new moon, is technically also conjunct Saturn and Neptune and Aries. It's slightly out of sign, which is, I mean, it is out of sign. They're in two different signs, which is why I didn't mention it first, even though it is actually pretty close of a conjunction. So how am I going to make sense of this exactly? That's the question I was asking myself. How am I going to make sense of this? This is how I'm going to make sense of it. Saturn, I like Saturn and Neptune because that is what I started this horoscope here with in this section, as giving us the determination, Saturn, to take our ideas, Neptune, about a new experience in life that we've really been trying to get to for quite some time, Aries, and to make it a reality, right? That's what it's about. It's about making it a reality. So the new moon conjunct this, right? In one hand, and I'll give you another interpretation of this in a minute. On the one hand is about us, right? Finally getting the determination, the clarity, the consistency to end old things, Pisces, once and for all, which at the same time is going to bring new things, Aries, Saturn, Neptune, more firmly into fruition in a more permanent and consistent way as well, right? Because they're connected. When you end something, then you're going to get a new experience. There's going to be something new that's going to come in. So in one way, it is bringing those things, right? Which is kind of what I've already been talking about, telling you, but I'll give you one more thing as well, because even though in the terms of like the big picture, like that's the evolutionary purpose of Saturn, Neptune, that's the big picture of it. And even though that's the big picture, sometimes on a daily basis, Saturn and Neptune can be a little hard, especially because the sun is going to be conjunct Saturn and Neptune shortly after this new moon. And of course, the moon's going to be there as well. And sometimes this can also be a little bit of a challenge when you have the personal planets there, because Neptune is very far out from where we live. That can be hard for us to understand. And Saturn is technically considered a malefic planet. So this could bring a little bit of a challenge here too. What is that? Again, I don't necessarily see it being a long-lasting thing, but what might that be? Well, again, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac about new beginnings, and it also too is about action, right? Taking that action to get to that new beginning, and it's also about acting in that new way, which, as I've said, is more in touch with our emotions and our passions as well. And sometimes Saturn can make that a little hazy and hard to grasp, and Saturn can make that feel a little restricted. And that to me isn't because we don't have clarity and we don't know what to do. Because remember, Mercury is stationing direct shortly after this new moon, around the same time the sun's going to be here conjunct Saturn and Neptune, right? And it's on the north node, which I also really like. So this alignment to me isn't like we think we have clarity, but we don't, and we're falling. No, to me, this alignment is about taking that first step, right? Aries, action, taking that first action. Now that we have the clarity and the wisdom about how to release the past to move forward and are trusting and having more faith and letting it be easy, it's taking that first step to do it. Aries is about action. It's at the very beginning degrees of the sign where the sun's going to meet it. And sometimes taking that first step, once you get clarity and once you get wisdom, is a little awkward at first. To take that first step when you're doing, right? When you're riding a bike for the first time, it's a little awkward for not because necessarily you're bad at it. It's just a little awkward at first because you're not used to moving your legs and your arms in that way or whatever, So that's the way that I see this new moon conjunct Saturn and Neptune and Aries is, finally we have the clarity to end these old things once and for all, finally, from the past, that we can also finally move into a new and different and better experience of life once and for all. And actually make it happen so that we're not dealing with this BS anymore, okay? And the way to do it is to do it in a way that's more at ease, more at flow, more trusting, more allowing it to happen. But taking that first step to end these old things or to just let it go, taking that first step to just let it go may feel awkward and weird. because it's not used to what we're doing. What are we used to doing? Maybe to give you more context around that. Well, with the South Node in Virgo, where we've had, the eclipse 2 weeks ago, right? Is sometimes Virgo can be about like holding on to things too tightly, right? Because Virgo's about the details, right? We're used to holding on to things so tightly. And what is being asked of us right now is to let it go. Don't hold on, let go, right? And letting go is less effort than holding on to something tightly. When you hold on to something tightly, you have to grasp it. But when you're letting go, you're just like, okay, just whatever. I'm just not going to do anything. I'm just going to let it kind of play itself out in its own way and like trust it'll be fine. And that's hard. That first step to let go of the past without wanting to grasp and control and to just let it be and just let it happen, that is hard. Okay. Not because we're doing something wrong, not because it's not right, but because it just feels different. It just feels different and not what we're used to. And it's going to take just some practice. It's going to take some practice to kind of make that happen. Okay. So that's the way I see it there, to allow these things to occur because we've done the work. We've done the work the past 5 years, especially this past year, to get to a new, different, and better experience of life. And when you've done the work, the test is easy, right? Or when you've done the work and all the work came before, then when you finally actually get to the end, it's easy. Like you already did what you needed to do. So now, so I think that's the thing here. There's not a lot of effort that's needed to close out these old things. The main effort that's needed is no effort, is letting go and allowing it to happen. And doing things in that way is the hard part because it's not where we've been. That is the challenge. Okay. But that I think we're going to work through, and maybe to give, some advice now that I'm done with this, that you're going to be able to work through by what? And hold on, maybe I should say this. I think this is going to happen naturally. I think we're going to get it. I think we're naturally going to figure out how to work with this in the days after, because I think there's such a strong positive Pisces energy, especially with Mercury direct, going to make a conjunction with the North Node after it's direct and all of that. Okay. But if there's a little struggle in the moment before it works itself out nicely, I'll give you some advice. Part of the advice is with the Pisces, right? You need to work through the fear around you missing your moment, missing the new, and work through those emotions. Not only that, but you also need to as well have more faith and trust that things are going to be okay and let things be easy and let things go instead of striving and pushing and forcing, right? That's the advice. You got to consciously choose to do that. And then once you consciously choose to do that and you find it a little bit hard, then what's the advice? The advice is to not doubt yourself and not feel like you're doing something wrong and to stay committed. Saturn committed, stay committed. Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, to acting in this more surrendered, trusting way without pushing and forcing. Okay. There. Which I think makes a lot of sense, right? Because we just had that lunar eclipse in Virgo. Virgo's about the holding on, the grasping, the pushing and forcing. Well, now we've kicked that for the most part. We've kicked that to the curb. And now it's like, okay, let's just let and allow things to happen in their own way and time and for it to work itself out in the way that it needs. Okay, to tie up these things from the past. And maybe to put it in another way, these things from the past don't need effort. They just need presence. I think maybe that's one way. They just need us to be present and to let it go, and then they'll work itself out there. Okay. And I think that's it. Because that's it, I'm now just going to repeat all of that one last time without the jargon. So let me do that now. What I think is going on at this new moon in Pisces is that we're finally committed and determined to make some new, different, and better experience of life we've been dreaming up for quite some time a reality, to actually make it happen. And this determination and this commitment, with the wisdom that we've learned from the past few years, is finally actually working to get us into a new experience, which we're feeling, maybe not in a big way, but in some way, shape, or form within ourselves that feels very good, very exciting, and very hopeful. But because this new experience finally happening is something that has never happened before, that we've been trying to get to, that's taken so long to occur, that now is finally occurring, we're feeling very excited. And we're also feeling very afraid that if we don't grab the moment now, that it'll go away and we'll lose our chance and lose our opportunity like we felt we have so many times before. And because we're excited but fearful, we then start to act funny and we start to get impatient and push and force our situation instead of trust in the timing that it needs, and push and force our situation, sure, to get into the new experience, but also to end the things that have been keeping us stuck and to let go of that. And that pushing and forcing creates a whole lot of issues: anxiety, stress, anger, frustration, and overwhelm in our mind, where we're confused about what to do to end the past, or just feel like it's so much action and work and steps that we need to do that can be very hard. But even though that's hard, this new moon in Pisces is a turning point. This new moon in Pisces changes that. And this new moon in Pisces changes that by helping us look inwards to realize what is making us so anxious and frustrated, and to realize that it's the fear and maybe some other emotional issues, that this moment is going to pass us by, and to work through that, and to work through the fear by having more trust and faith that everything is going to work out, and by stopping pushing and forcing, and by just taking it easy and resting and being more in flow. And that realization right there changes everything. It then helps us to finally release the past once and for all in a real way that will actually work, with more continuous momentum, to finally make this shift and to stop fighting against ourselves, to stop seeing the new and the old as enemies or as separate, and to start to see them work together. That leaving the end behind is key to moving into the new that's going on, which I think is a very good thing, even though those first few steps can be hard. Even though those first few steps, acting in this more surrendered way, may be a little difficult because it's just not what we're used to. We're used to pushing and forcing and controlling a little bit. That's going on. And I think a lot of this is going to happen naturally, that we'll get here. And I think we're naturally going to work out the first awkward moments and be just fine. But if you need advice, I'll give you some. And the advice is to consciously choose to work through some of your emotions and fears around a new life manifesting or not. By trusting and having more faith in the divine and being more at ease and letting go of control, which will then help you to do what needs to be done to move forward. And also too, once you do let go of control and have more faith, to stay firm in that commitment to that, so that you don't fall back into these old habits, which I really don't think we're going to do anyways. There. Okay. And that's it. Because that's it. I'm going to erase the chart. And now I'm just going to say a few other things about this energy. I'm going to say a few more things in a more conversational way to hopefully give you a different and better idea of what's going on here. What do I want to say? This new moon, okay, I've said a lot. I've said a lot in this video as we went through the aspects about this new moon itself, about the frustration and about the fear and about all of that. This new moon in particular, in my opinion, is not about the fear continuing. It's not about the confusion continuing. It's not about the frustration continuing. This new moon to me is actually very positive. It's about that stopping. It's about any confusion and stuck energy and any issues we've had and any anxiety and anger finally being resolved. Not only is it about that finally being resolved, but it's also about us getting more clarity and more insight here about what we need to do in order to end old things and move into another thing. And a lot of support to make that happen. A lot of support to come out of these hard things and into these better things, and to allow that process to flow much better. So that's what I want to say there. That's the main takeaway. The main takeaway from this horoscope is not, oh, great, more anger and all of that. No, that's ending. That's the point of this new moon, right? The point of this, that's ending. And instead, we're getting clarity, more calm, more focus, more ease to actually finally end these things, and more luck and more support to actually end these things once and for all, so that we can move forward. So please let me be clear on that, and let that be the takeaway, that is what is happening here. Okay. Okay. And this clarity, focus, and ease, right, is finally going to end the old once and for all. It's finally going to end the old experience of our lives, which I think has gone on for many, many years, 35, 36, 40 years, going to end that once and for all so that we can get into a different and better experience that we've been working towards for quite some time. Okay, that's the takeaway. At this new moon in Pisces, the confusion and frustration and anger is going to break, and you're going to be left with clarity, determination, patience, and trust in order to finally make the new happen in a way that's going to work in more ease. Okay, what else do I want to say about it? What is going to make the difference? What's going to make the difference? What's going to take all of that away? Well, again, it's the key part is the trust, faith, surrender, and ease in the letting go. That's the key part too, right? It's like, what's going to change all of this? What's going to all of a sudden take some frustration, stuck energy, and give us a lot more support and momentum to end old things, to move into the new? It's going to be all the Pisces themes here. It's more of that we need to cultivate, which in this case, right, is the trust and faith, because that's going to help us overcome the fear. Remember, one of the reasons why I said we're stuck or why we're acting weird is fear. Right? It's going to help us overcome the fear, because one of our big fears is that we're going to miss our moment, that we're going to miss the window. If we don't act fast, if we don't act now, then we're never going to get into the new experience, right? But if we have more trust and faith, then that goes away. If we have more trust and faith, like the new is going to be there. Whether I make it now or a few weeks from now or whatever, like it cannot pass me by if it's meant for me. Right? When you have more of that perspective and that point of view, you act differently. You don't push and force. You are more aligned. You're more in flow. You're more at ease. So it's that's going to make the difference. Not only is it the hope and faith that's really going to make the difference, but it's also too, remember that ease. Ease is a huge part of it. The ease and the letting go is going to make a big difference as well. Okay, because what's needed is not controlling. What's needed is not more doing. What's needed is not more details. What's needed is simply being present and allowing these things to end and allowing these things to be gone, right? That's also what's changing too. Okay, we're working through the fear by trusting that we're going to be fine and everything is going to be there when the time is right. And also by no longer working, proving, doing, holding on, and just being present and letting it work itself out on its own, Okay. And that's what's going to give us more of that momentum and ease and support. Okay. Because again, the trust and the faith is going to make us not feel so rushed, because it's going to be there no matter what. And that letting go is not going to have us doing too much for the situation or complicating the situation. It's going to have us doing just what the situation needs. Okay. That's happening here. Okay. Right. It's that letting go. Now, yeah, right. And maybe I should give you some examples. Of what that is. So like, let's say, right, because there's not a lot of work. I want to say there's not a lot of effort that's really needed to end your situations, even though you do have to be present in it and you do have to let it go. So what could that look like? Well, let's say that some of you are ending a relationship. Maybe it's a divorce or something, right? What's needed to end that should not be, especially not at this time, more conversations, more details, more of working that out. That should have already been done. It's just simply waiting for the paperwork to go through the process, okay, the divorce paperwork, and then signing it, right? It's like, that's what it is. And that's the feeling, to give you one example where it's like the past is technically not over, right? Because you haven't signed the divorce papers or the divorce haven't gone through the system, right? And you're not technically in the new yet, but there's really not much you can do except just be patient and give it time and just put a signature on it and move on. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing here that's really happening, is that we haven't finished ending the old and we're not quite in the new, but it doesn't need a lot of work per se. And the effort it does need should be effort that's more simple, and that you'll have a lot of support to do. So let's say that you're moving home. Let's say some of you are moving home and you're like, well, it feels like it's a lot of work to have to move my home from one place to another. And my thought is, it doesn't have to be a lot of work. It can actually be very simple. And there's a lot of support to make it simple, and if it feels like it's a lot of work, then this new moon is going to change that. This new moon, instead of making it feel like, oh my gosh, I'm like, it's taking forever to move because I have to get out of here and into another, it's going to make that move go really easy. For some reason, you're going to enjoy cleaning up the house, right? To get here, you're going to enjoy moving forward, or things are going to start to work out much better, So it's a situation like that too, because you see that you're like in between two things. You don't own the old house anymore, but you still live there. You're not in the new, you got to pack up. It's that weird in between, but the packing doesn't have to be hard, and you may have a lot of unexpected luck to make that work out. Okay. What's another example that I can give you? Maybe another example, right? Maybe another example is that you want to start a new relationship with someone in your life, but the old one is on its way out, but it hasn't really ended yet. So you're kind of in this weird in between space, right? Well, what do you need to do? What you need to do is end the old relationship, but because maybe there's a need to move your stuff out of each other's houses, right? To end and be firm in the ending of the relationship, right? But to just let it go, right? All you have to do is just let it go. Stop talking to that person. Let them move all their stuff out. Like, that's it, right? That's kind of the vibe of what's going on. It's like the last thing that's really needed to move into the new, and all that's required is to end something and to just let it go and to not try to get it back, right? Do you see? To not try to get it back and to not try to make it more hard than it needs to be, right? Or maybe this is a money situation, right? Maybe some of you are trying to change the way that you make money, and maybe you've already got your new thing set that you're going to do, or figured out what you want to do, new job or whatever, but maybe you haven't quite ended the old. There's something about the old that still feels like it's going on, right? You're still in the old job that you gave your 2 weeks notice to, or something like that. Well, all that's needed is not for you to work harder, right? Because you're leaving that job, okay? And you're moving into another one. You just got to be present. You just got to be present on the last few days of your time at that job to kind of just go through the motions and just be there. It doesn't necessarily have to require a whole lot of work. And if you feel it does, there's a lot of support to actually make that quite easy for you there. So I think that those are some of that's my thought. We're getting more consistent momentum to end the old, to get into the new. And more clarity and more support and more luck to finally do it, even if it feels a little weird at first. And the way to end the old and to get in the new is to simply just be present and allow. Be present and allow. Because whatever is left to be tied up, whatever is left to be ended and resolved before you move forward is not going to take a lot of work. Shouldn't take a lot of work. All it should take is for you to let go. And if you feel like it's going to take a lot of work, there's a lot of support there to help you with that. It's not meant to be hard. The ending these old things is no longer meant to be hard. Okay? As long as you allow it to be easy. And that's because we've done a lot of the work already in the past in order to get here. That's one of the reasons why. Okay, what other thought do I have as well? Another thought that I have here too on the letting go is also about like letting go is supposed to be easy. Right? That's how I'm understanding the concept with the Pisces. But sometimes letting go can feel hard. When you're used to holding on, and when you are used to something or attached to something as well. So maybe there's also like some things there that's coming up, right? Which could also be attached to the themes of loss and grief as well, because some of you are ending things in your life, and sure, maybe you don't want them to end, but they're ending anyways. Or maybe you did want them to end, but there's also a lot of emotions that are coming up with it. So another thing I think that we're having to learn too is like to just allow the ending to occur. And sometimes, even though that's supposed to be easy, right? It's like just allowing is supposed to be easy. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes saying goodbye to someone who's been in your life for a while is hard. Sometimes saying goodbye to a job you've had for a while is hard, not because you have to do a lot of things to make it happen necessarily, but because there's the emotions there as well. And because sometimes doing nothing is hard. Like sometimes when you're doing something, you feel better about yourself. You feel like, oh, I'm being productive, or, oh, I'm trying, or, oh, I'm not. And sometimes when you're doing things, you don't have to face your emotions. But when you're letting things go and they don't require as much effort, all it requires is an acceptance. And when you're letting things go, and it's not really requiring much, then you have to sit with your emotions that come out about everything that's happening. That's kind of hard. So I think that's another thing here that's coming up too with this Pisces as well, is like there's not a lot that needs to be done now to end these old things and get to new things, because we've already done most of it the past 5 years and beyond. Okay. All that we really need to do is just be patient and let it play itself out and have faith that it will work out in the way it needs at the right time. And that, in theory, as a concept, is meant to be easy, right? You just chill and have faith and let it play out. But even though it's meant to be easy and as a concept, in practice, that can actually be quite hard. It can actually be quite hard to just say goodbye and let things go, and can trigger a lot of emotions because we're used to having people around and we're used to having things here, and can bring up a sense of loss and grief, right? Just letting things go and make you want to control, to get it back, to not be, to fix it, to not have it be, right? Even though in concept theory, it's easy, in practice, it can be hard. And what we're learning at this new moon in Pisces, right, is like, stop fighting against it. Stop fighting against it. Stop trying to hold on to something that's meant to leave, and allow it to go and allow it to be easy, and to not try to grasp to keep it with you, and to just release control and let it go from there. And once we release control, even if it's a little awkward at first, things are going to happen naturally and easily on their own, So I think that's the thought there. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but I think that's the thought. Stop being afraid, stop being impatient, and stop letting your insecurity hold on to these things from the past, and just let it go, because that's all that's needed, and it's meant to be easy. Okay. And that speaks to the fear I didn't mention. I mentioned earlier in this video that part of the reason why we're acting in weird ways and overcomplicating the situation as we make this transition is because we're passionate, but also because we're afraid of the new not being there by the time we eventually get there. But I think it's also like a fear, another fear, or if not a fear, a sadness of like letting go, of like, what does it mean to really say goodbye to the past? What does that really mean emotionally? What does that really feel like emotionally? I think there's a lot of that. And maybe I should have mentioned that earlier in the video, but sometimes things don't come to me till later. I think there's a lot of that too. There's the sadness around letting go. We're sad about leaving the past behind. And because we're sad about leaving the past behind, we want to hold on to it more, because we don't want it to go. I mean, we do want it to go, but we don't. But we do, but we don't. It was so good. It was good at one time. And this new moon is trying to break that, and trying to say, stop being sad that the past is going, and make your peace with it. Because things have to move on, right? And stop trying to recreate the past. Stop trying to recreate or hold on to the past. You got to let it go to kind of move forward. And once you let it go, we're going to go from here. Okay. So I think that's what I'm going to say. That at this new moon, we're going to stop pushing and forcing and feeling stuck and upset and angry about the past and about how we move forward and into what way. And a lot of our emotions are going to calm down. A lot of our emotions are going to calm down, and we're going to get a lot of clarity on how to finally once and for all leave the past and move forward, and a lot of emotional peace to do it too, which is going to help us to release the past in a way that's more easy without as much effort, and have a lot of divine support in order to do so, because it's not meant to be hard. It's meant to be easy. And this should be encouragement, because maybe some of you are looking at your projects now and you're like, oh, shoot. Maybe some of you right now are like, it's going to take me forever to end these old things. And the energy of this new moon, it's not going to take as long as you think. It's not going to take as long as you think. It's not going to take as much effort as you think. It's going to be a lot easier than you think. And you're either going to get an insight to help you with that, or Spirit's going to help you work it out in a much better way there. So I think that's all I have to say. I don't know why not too much else is coming to me at the moment, but I'm going to end that section there, and I'm going to look at your inside degrees. Where do I have those? Here they are. Okay. This new moon is at 28 degrees Pisces. So I believe the degree 27, 28, and 29 can all be relevant because the planets are in motion. These inside degrees were not written by me. They were written by someone else named Elias Lonsdale, who channeled the meanings of each of the degrees from spirit. So let's look at this. Pisces 27. Earth magic works upon the imagination to turn around old patterns and lost worlds by seeing it all with a different pair of eyes. Well, I 100% believe that. This new moon in Pisces is going to bring clarity and a totally different perspective on the past and on what we need to let go of and how to let go of it so we can do it finally. Once and for all, so much easier. It reads on, the one who stayed under in a trance of automatic repetition, a regressive loop, is crying out for soul retrieval, is searching for whole new ways to feel and experience the way the energies move. I think that's been us. I think we've been stuck for a very long time and feeling like we can't quite move forward. We're stuck in a loop, 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards. I think this is going to end that. Here, I also like the thought about whole new ways. And that's what we've been talking about for the past year. We have to act in different ways. And here we are searching for the whole new ways to feel. And I think starting to get a handle on those whole new ways to feel and act. It says everything depends upon how you hold it, the field of assumptions and yearnings. Okay. I do think there is a lot of emotional stuff we need to work out at this new moon around that. It says, for there is a tremendous ability here to follow a subtle track right through the middle of the lingering trances into a heightened experience of what this has all been about for so long. Searching for a deeper path through, learning it is there, not being able to carry forward any other way. So I think that this new moon is also going to bring not only here that understanding of what the new way is, that's going to help us get unstuck from this loop that we've been in for a very long time, but it's going to help us find the path forward, the right path forward to maneuver all of this stuff to get to where we need to go. Okay, I don't think that's too different from what I've said so far. Let's look at Pisces 28. It says, possession by local spirits and mischievous, playful passion. Cast into an abyss, dumped out of status and specialness and made to be hyper receptive to what is moving here, an abandoned center, karmically sacrificed to learn both humility and the lessons of the street. You know, this reminds me of that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn I've been talking about for freaking ever, because that's a lot about valuing status and success, right? And it's interesting that we get this degree of Pisces. Pisces, I didn't mention, is also about humility and kind of like, right? Disrobing the self to see who you truly are. So what this degree makes me think as well is that part of what this new moon in Pisces is going to help us do is to finally let go of this need for status and success and for the old way of doing things, and to finally remove the robe, right? To get rid of all of that and to embrace a new way of being, so that no longer is haunting us or pulling us in a direction that I really like. Okay, the state of mind, random, chaotic, inspirational, capricious, given to every kind of spirit passing through, sorely troubled yet fantastically out of touch, a regressive loop with powerful emanations. The feeling is that something must be done and that this will require a change of heart, but you go deep and it takes a whole lot of desperation to turn this one around. Sure, maybe there's some of that desperation that came before the new moon, right? That this new moon is trying to break the energy of, okay? But I think after the new moon, we're going to feel a lot of this. We're going to feel a lot of that power. We're going to feel the change of heart. We're going to feel able to do things in a different way. And maybe that's key to understand, is that I do see this new moon in like different parts. There's before the new moon, stressful. Before the new moon, very stressful, overwhelmed, sad, anxious, fearful, pushing, forcing, excited, all the emotions. Okay, crazy. And then there's at the new moon, clarity that's coming, kind of like the wisdom, the peace of mind, the luck and support that's coming. And then after that, we have to take that first action to put in the clarity into place, which may feel awkward, but also lots of support to really help us with that as well. All right, then we'll go to 29. Scintillating performance, learning by heart all of the ways to perfect the earth dance, elaborately and ritualistically devising and setting up cycles, projects, programs, and trainings to master skills, to develop missing areas, and to make up for what are felt to be gaps and gaping holes. Remedial practice, going back to go forward. I feel that. Relentlessly pursuing perfection, you are granted by a sensibility that knows and can recognize anywhere the real thing, the fulfilled prototype. Tyrannically beset by the need to embody that archetype no matter what, putting yourself through hell to make it happen. Let's see. No sacrifice is too great. I don't know if I'm feeling this degree too much, I have to say. A virtual masochism of submission to programs, trials, and cycles, trancing out on discipline and constraint, yet you are ultimately inspired and infused with a marvelous and even spectacular self-witnessing capacity and self-reinventing skill. Now that I do resonate with this last sentence. That does work if you stay with it forever and refuse to hear of anything less. That's what I feel. This trancing out on discipline and constraint. Yeah, ultimately inspired and infused with marvelous and even a spectacular self-witnessing capacity. This is right. That's this to me, reading all those degrees, this is like the end of like the emotional cycle. I think, yeah, there's things going on externally in our life that we just need to let go of, right? That are the final endings that we just need to let go of and keep very simple. But these inside degrees are pointing more towards the inner process. I think there's been a long inner emotional journey to get to where we are now. That's been going on, of attachments towards the old way and the old things of life. And these inside degrees are making me think that not only is this new moon about letting the physical stuff go in our life by just letting it go and ending it and not doing anything to save it, just by letting it go. But it's also about our emotions ending, the reliance on the old way and the appreciation or the attachment to the old way breaking, and us seeing ourselves anew, seeing ourselves inside emotionally in a new way, and approaching our life emotionally in a new way that values the new life in the new ways more than the old, and that significant emotional inner transformation happening as well. Okay, so that's what I get there. It's both. Letting internally finally being done with the past and getting a lot of focus and inspiration to finally do things differently, and the past also ending, but by us letting it go and not trying to save it. And I like that thought of like, that's really all that's needed. When it comes to your external situations at this new moon, is just don't try to save it. Don't try to save it. And sometimes not trying to save something is hard because we want to hold it. We want to fix it. Don't try to save whatever is ending in your life, is what's needed, and adjust your emotional perspective so that you don't feel the need to save it and so that you can let it go. And this new moon is not about trying harder to make something happen. It's about trying less to make something happen and letting it go so that it can leave on its own, right? And work it out in its own way in time, and about not trying to save these things so that you can move forward. And maybe that's the most Pisces thing of all, right? Because Pisces sometimes can be very self-sacrificing and, want to be the martyr for everyone. And I think that's the lesson here is like, if something's ending, don't try to save it. We have to let it go. And I think it might be hard at first, but as more of the energy is, we're going to get it. We're going to get what needs to happen, even if it feels a little weird. Okay. So that's there. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Any other thoughts while I pull your card here? The grief aspect, right? And I think there is one more thought, some sadness and some grief about leaving the past behind. That's also part of the issue that we're trying to work through. Creating more of this, like wanting to hold on and not let things die, that we're going to have to break through at this new moon. But I feel like, and the reason why I haven't focused on that as much in this horoscope, as I did say, the fear of the new not being there or that the fear we're going to miss our window of opportunity for the new, is not because we're not feeling a lot of grief and sadness from the past and this wanting to hold on. But I think there's a little bit of a longer journey with that, because Mercury is going to go retrograde in Cancer in a few months, and I think that that's also going to be a lot about the past. Cancer is like looking back at the past and working through some emotions there. So I'm not saying that there's not some grief from the past that's making you want to fix and hold on, that you've got to learn how to let go of. I think there is some of that, but I feel like that's more of a longer journey, and that even if we do work through some of that now, there's still some more later. And that's why I chose, right? A lot of interpretations are just a judgment call. That's why I chose in this interpretation to go more with the main issue making us act weird is not the sadness and the loss and the grief. It's more of the fear of the timing of us missing our window of opportunity, because I think that the grief is a longer journey to work that out. That's going to take a few more months to really work through, even though I think that we can be doing some of that now. Okay, and I think that's it. This is the final ending of something in your life you've been trying to get rid of for a long time, and it doesn't require a lot of effort. It requires you simply to let it go and stop trying to fix it. Stop trying to fix it. And once you let it go and you stop trying to fix it, everything's going to change. Everything's going to change easy. And when you trust, everything will be fine. There's going to be a lot of support to make that happen. Okay, now let me look at your card. We've got Strength reversed here, and at the bottom of the deck, we've got Justice reversed. Right? Maybe there's the fear. The Strength reversed to me is a lot about the fear and maybe some insecurity about things. Maybe it's also too about like wanting, not trusting, not having inner strength, right? And sometimes when we don't have inner strength, we try to have strength externally by forcing things. And the Strength card is not about external force. It's usually like, right, a person with a lion that's calm. So I think that those are my thoughts here. Maybe we're lacking the inner strength and confidence and faith that we're going to be able to transition out of one thing and into another. And because we don't have the inner strength, we're trying to overcompensate by external strength, by pushing and forcing in our situation that's making things worse. And the answer is not to push and force more in your situation, because that's going to make things more complicated. The answer is to build the inner strength first. Because once you do that, and confidence, then everything outside of you will come together much better. Justice reverse can indicate a lot of feeling unbalanced. Okay. Feeling unbalanced as you kind of get this realization, especially if there is some fear and insecurity. But justice too is also about like relationships and compromise. And maybe some of you also like want to compromise or want to make things work. I don't know if there's like a weird thing of like, maybe I can make it work, or wanting to like compromise with this thing from the past as well. And my thought on that is a no. We're not compromising, right? Because the new moon's in Pisces, right? And Pisces quincunx is Libra, right? Justice reminds me of Libra, right? Okay. Pisces quincunx is Libra. Libra's about compromise and relationships and trying to be fair. Pisces isn't about that. Pisces is about letting it go, letting it go, which is different. Sometimes when you just let things go, it's not fair. It's not fair, but you just have to do it, right? If you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you're in an argument with someone and you want to respond, right? You want to respond because you're mad that you said that they said that to you, right? Or you want to try to work it out, right? Well, Pisces is not going to try to work it out and is not going to respond. Pisces is just going to let it go. Okay, they won the argument, whatever. You know what I mean? Like they think they won, even though and I didn't say anything about whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is not about saving what's happened from the past by compromising or by working harder or by trying to be fair. It's about ending something and letting something go. And sometimes letting something go doesn't seem fair, but that's okay. It doesn't seem fair. And there's also a sense too of like, sometimes justice has to do with, right? Like, how we got here to this point. Maybe it just doesn't seem right that after all we went through, you would be ending this thing and letting this thing go. And I think there's a need of like, there's some times that are not about fairness and not about compromise and not about justice. Some, especially when spirit's involved and when big life cycles are involved and when intuition is involved. Some things in life we just have to do, not because it's fair, but because that's what we need to do right now. And that's what we're being divinely called to do. And maybe that's what some of you need to realize, especially because the next full moon is going to be in Libra. So there's a message here that I'm going to have to lean more into for the next full moon. Okay. Because maybe the next full moon, this is going to be more of a thing where some of you are going to be like, oh, well, it's not fair for me to just leave the situation like this or just end it like that. Or I feel like I should have compromised and everything was up in the air. And there's a major message here. Sometimes things aren't fair. Sometimes you don't get the result that you worked hard to get or that you thought you would get. And that's okay. And sometimes that's the way that life is. And you just need to let it go instead of being sad and grieving about it and holding on to it so that you can move forward, And sometimes we need to let go and then heal the sadness later, right? Sorry, I'm still back on that thing because I'm like, I feel like the inner healing of the sadness and grief is a longer journey. Okay. So maybe another thought for some of you is like, stop trying to heal all the sadness and grief and then let go of something. Let go of something first. And then the sadness and the grief will start to heal after that point and not the other way around too. So I think that's what I'm going to say there. Get the courage, get the strength to let things go. Because once you have that strength inside you, it's going to be a lot easier outside and you won't have to compensate by doing more outside you. And stop trying to compromise with people and be fair and think about whether or not what you're doing is fair for your situation and fair for the effort that you put in. It's not about fairness. It's not about compromise. Sometimes certain things in life just are the way that they are and needs to be let go of. And stop letting these debates about fairness and all of that stop you from doing what you need. Let go first and then deal with that later. Okay. And I think that's it. I hope that was helpful. I hope you all have a good new moon in Pisces, and I'll talk to you 2 weeks from now on the next video for that full moon in Libra. Thank you so much. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you later.